I was curled up in the back seat, crying and begging my mom to take me to the hospital. Every second felt like my insides were on fire. But instead of helping me, she looked me in the eye and pulled into a Target to buy a phone charger. That was the moment I realized I could be on the verge of death, and she would still put me second. You ever feel a pain so intense, so completely out of nowhere, that for a moment you genuinely wonder if you're dying? Not in some overdramatic, teenage hypersensitivity way. I mean the kind of pain that hijacks your entire body, forces you to your knees, and makes you realize how fragile you really are. That's exactly what happened to me that day in the back seat of my mom's car. 1 second I was fine, scrolling through my phone while she drove us home from some random errands, and then suddenly, boom, this white-hot fire bloomed in my lower stomach. At first, I froze, thinking maybe I just twisted wrong or sat awkwardly. But within minutes, it felt like someone had reached inside me and was tearing my insides apart, like my stomach was trying to detonate from within. I hunched over, gripping the seatbelt, gasping, my whole body drenched in sweat. The pain didn't come in waves. It was constant, merciless. I whimpered at first, not wanting to sound dramatic, but when the agony didn't stop, when it only got worse, I finally called out to my mom. "Mom, something's wrong," I managed. Her eyes flicked up to the rearview mirror. She looked at me for half a second and went back to the road. "Probably just gas," she mumbled. "You're always so sensitive to food or whatever." My stomach clenched hard again and I groaned, nearly curling up into a ball. It wasn't gas. I knew my body. This was wrong. "Mom, it really hurts." "Please," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. But she just gave a tired sigh, like I was complaining about a paper cut. That's when I knew I was in this alone. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, she pulled into the Target parking lot. I was still shaking, curled in the back seat, swallowing tears and pain like it was the only thing keeping me alive. My stomach was throbbing, every bump in the road sending unbearable jolts through my whole body, and I thought maybe she was stopping because she finally realized something was really wrong. That maybe, just maybe, she was going to help. But instead, she shifted the car into park with this weird little sigh, grabbed her purse, and turned to me with the most casual expression on her face. "I just need to grab a new phone charger real quick. Mine stopped working this morning." I stared at her, my mind literally refusing to process what she was saying. I was barely breathing, physically unable to sit upright, and she was talking about a charger? Before I could even beg her not to, she was out of the car, shutting the door behind her like this was any other normal day. No urgency, no fear, not even hesitation. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out, just a broken little whimper as the next wave of pain hit. My vision blurred and my limbs trembled. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, thought about calling 911, but I didn't even have the strength to unlock the screen without dry heaving. I could feel something inside me giving up, like my body was switching to emergency shutdown mode. I rested my head against the cool window, tears slipping down my face without permission. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Her car was still empty. She was still shopping. I didn't know it yet, but as she browsed cheap electronics, my appendix had already started leaking poison into my body. Time lost all meaning after she walked into that Target. I was stuck in this strange, painful fog, my mind floating somewhere between panic and pure physical agony. All I had to ground me was the digital clock on the dashboard, 4:14 p.m. I remember it because I kept staring at it, like if I focused hard enough, I could make her come back faster. At first, I kept whispering to myself. Asterisk, she said 5 minutes. Just 5. Asterisk, but 5 turned into 10, then 15, and every passing minute made the pain worse. Not just physically, but emotionally. I kept thinking, asterisk, she knows I'm in pain. She saw it. Why isn't she coming back? Asterisk, my entire lower abdomen felt like it was pulsing with a red-hot pressure, like something inside me was trying to tear open, and I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my throat. My breaths were shallow. I couldn't sit still, but every movement sent lightning bolts through my core. I remember grabbing my phone and forcing my shaking fingers to text her. Asterisk, please hurry. It hurts. So bad. Please. Asterisk, I stared at the screen, the typing bubbles never appearing. No reply. No call back. I tried again a few minutes later. Asterisk, I think something's wrong. Please, Mom. Asterisk, still nothing. I thought about opening the door myself and stumbling into the store, but one attempt to sit up made black dots swarm across my vision. My skin was ice cold, but my body felt like it was on fire in the center. I leaned back, tears soaking into the seatbelt strap, and the worst part wasn't even the pain. It was realizing that she might not care as much as I thought she did. 25 minutes later, she came strolling out with a charger and a Starbucks cup, sipping casually, like I hadn't just been dying without her. She slid into the driver's seat like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just left me alone in the car for almost half an hour while I was barely conscious. She glanced at me, her brow furrowed for maybe half a second, then said with the most dismissive tone I've ever heard, "God, you look pale. Did you even drink anything today?" I couldn't answer. My jaw was clenched tight from the pain, and honestly, I could barely even see her at that point. My fingers were numb. I had sweat soaking through my hoodie. I managed to croak out. Hospital. We need to go to the hospital. And instead of panicking or speeding off, she sighed. Fully, dramatically sighed like I was the one inconveniencing her. Fine. If you're going to act like this, I'll take you, she muttered, throwing the car into drive like I'd just asked for an impulsive trip to the mall. She didn't speed. She didn't even turn the music off. I laid there in the passenger seat shaking, every bump threatening to split me in half, and all I could think was, asterisk, I might die here. And she still doesn't believe me. Asterisk, we pulled into the emergency room drop-off, and finally, someone noticed how bad it was. A nurse outside took one look at me, half collapsed, gray in the face, and immediately yelled to get a wheelchair. A tech came running with one, and the second I was in it, I slumped over, eyes half open, barely aware of people moving around me, asking questions I couldn't respond to. Everything after that happened in a blur, doctors calling out numbers, nurses hooking me to machines, and one phrase cutting through it all like a cold knife to the chest. His appendix has ruptured. We need to prep him for surgery. Now, when I came to after surgery, everything felt like it was happening underwater. My mouth was dry, my body ached with this dull, all-consuming soreness, and there was a tight, burning sensation in my lower abdomen like someone had stapled fire to my side. Tubes were in my nose, and 4 was hooked into my arm, and machines beeped softly around me. My eyelids fluttered open, disoriented, and for a moment, I thought I might be dreaming. But then I heard the doctor explaining something to someone in the room, and the words punched through the haze. The appendix burst before we got to him. There was a lot of infection already spreading. We're lucky we got him when we did. Lucky. That word echoed in my head over and over. Lucky I didn't die. Lucky I made it in time. Lucky, even after being left in a car while my body broke itself apart. I turned my head slowly and saw her, my mom, sitting in the room's corner, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for an oil change. No worry in her expression. No guilt. Just scrolling, sipping the lukewarm coffee she probably picked up while I was being cut open. When she noticed my eyes on her, she looked up and said with absolutely no emotion, "Well, I guess it was pretty bad, huh? No, I'm sorry. No, I should have listened. Nothing. I didn't have the strength to fight, but I felt something settle in my chest, something cold and heavy. I had been screaming silently for help while she bought a charger and a coffee. I almost died, and her biggest concern that day had been keeping her phone at 100%. That realization, it did something to me. Something I still haven't fully shaken. The first 2 days after surgery were rough, but the third day? That was the nightmare. I started to feel hot, unbearably hot, like my body was boiling from the inside. I remember waking up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my sheets sticking to me, heart pounding out of rhythm, and this pounding ache in my head that made everything around me look like it was twisting. A nurse came in during one of her routine checks and immediately noticed something was wrong. She touched my forehead, frowned, and called in another nurse. They started talking in hushed voices, checking my temperature, changing my adjusting monitors. I could hear words like infection, spreading, and escalating vitals, and my stomach sank, not just from fear, but from something deeper. This was getting worse, and I could feel it. I knew my body, and my body was going into battle against itself. Through all of this, my mom just sat there across the room, barely lifting her head from her phone unless a nurse asked her a direct question. She wasn't crying. She wasn't freaking out. She just kept scrolling, occasionally sighing. And when I moaned in pain or whimpered from the fever, she'd glance over and say something like, "You really don't handle being sick very well." That sentence haunts me. I couldn't believe I was lying in a hospital bed with a ruptured appendix and a spreading infection, asterisk literally fighting for my life, asterisk. And she was still acting like I was being dramatic. That wasn't just lack of empathy. That felt like cruelty. Every other patient I saw had a worried parent hovering nearby, but not me. I had a mother who treated my near-death experience like an annoying cold she wished I'd just sleep off. It was around day 4 in the hospital when my aunt dropped by, and honestly, seeing her was like being thrown a life raft. She had this urgency in her eyes the second she stepped into my room, and when she saw the IVs, the pale look on my face, and the oxygen tube under my nose, she was immediately at my side, holding my hand, asking what had happened. I tried to explain between bouts of nausea and barely there energy, but she pieced it together quickly from the nurses and my shaky words. When she turned to my mom and asked, "Why didn't you bring him here sooner?" The energy in the room shifted completely. My mom gave this flat, exhausted groan, rolled her eyes like she was the one being attacked, and snapped. "I thought he was just overreacting, as usual. He always gets dramatic when his stomach hurts." That sentence made the blood drain from my aunt's face. She looked between me and my mom like she couldn't believe what she just heard. And then my mom doubled down, like she always does when she's cornered. "You know how he is. He always acts like he's dying over nothing. If I brought him in every time he complains, we'd be living at the hospital." In that moment, someone else finally saw the gaslighting I had been drowning in for years. But instead of apologizing or showing any kind of regret, my mom folded her arms and actually made me sound like the villain. She shifted every ounce of blame onto me, like I had somehow weaponized my own ruptured organ just to inconvenience her. I saw my aunt's jaw tighten. She didn't argue. She just sat next to me, quietly seething, but something in her face said it all. Asterisk, she finally saw the truth too. Asterisk. After my aunt left that day, I noticed something in myself start to change. I wasn't just recovering from surgery anymore. I was unraveling years of confusion and denial. I laid in that stiff hospital bed, staring at stained ceiling tiles, thinking not just about my appendix, but about every single time growing up where I said I was in pain, scared, or hurting, and got told I was just being dramatic. Like maybe it wasn't just this one moment. Maybe this was part of a much bigger pattern. I remembered the time I sprained my wrist falling off my bike when I was 9, and she made me wait a whole day before taking me to urgent care because she said I was just trying to get out of school. Spoiler alert, it was fractured. Or the time I threw up for hours and she called it just a bug. Turned out it was a stomach virus, and I ended up embarrassing myself in class the next day like she didn't even care because it wasn't her reputation. And now, here I was. Older, broken open, full of infection, stuffed with antibiotics and stitched like a science experiment. And she was still acting like everything I felt was an inconvenience to her. I wasn't even angry at that point. I was tired. Tired in a way I didn't know a person could be. I stopped asking her for things while in the hospital. Stopped telling her when the pain got bad or when the nausea made me feel like I'd throw up every 5 minutes. I asked the nurses instead. I spoke softer to them. I trusted them more. Because when you're lying in a hospital bed wondering if you'll be okay, some people show up. And some people walk off to go buy a phone charger. It happened 2 weeks after I was discharged from the hospital. We were sitting at the dinner table. My stepdad was tapping through channels on the TV, Mom was scrolling through her phone again, and I was silently eating, still moving carefully because my stomach was tender and still healing. The food didn't even taste right yet. Nothing really did. The conversation started with something dumb, like what show to watch after dinner, and my mom made a sarcastic comment about how I always get emotional if we don't choose what I like. I don't know what snapped at me at that moment, but I slammed my fork down, and I mean slammed it hard enough to startle them both. My voice was shaking, but I practically growled at her. Do you care more about your phone charger than your kid? Silence. The whole room froze. She blinked slowly, like she couldn't believe I'd brought that up. My stepdad looked like a deer in headlights, and I held her gaze with a kind of fire in my chest I had never felt before. Years of being brushed off, ignored, belittled, all coming up like a wave I couldn't swallow anymore. You left me in the car while I was literally dying, I said, my voice cracking. And you came back with Starbucks and a phone charger. She didn't say anything. Not at first. She just stared at me, her lips pressed tight, and for once in her life, she looked nervous. I wasn't yelling anymore. Just speaking. Cold. Clear. Honest. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of upsetting her. I was finally letting her feel what I'd carried in silence for years. That moment changed something. She couldn't talk her way out of it. And she sure as hell couldn't make me feel crazy this time. The next morning, she came into my room like nothing had happened. Knocked once, didn't wait for a response, and just walked in holding laundry like we hadn't had that explosion at dinner the night before. I didn't say a word, just kept scrolling through my phone. Back turned to her, heart racing a little because I was still angry, still hurt, but trying so hard to keep it contained. Then she said it, in that calm, overly sweet tone she always used when she wanted to manipulate the air in the room. I didn't know it was that serious, you know, she said, folding a pair of socks neatly. You didn't make it sound like something urgent. I froze. That pit opened up in my stomach all over again, not from pain this time, but pure disbelief. I turned my head slowly, stared at her, trying to see if she was joking. But she wasn't. She was dead serious. She actually had the audacity to stand there and pretend like I hadn't been crystal clear, like I hadn't been begging for help, while shaking and crying in the back seat, texting her through tears while she was picking out chargers and iced coffee. You're changing the story, I said quietly, the words barely above a whisper. I told you I was in pain. I asked you to take me to the hospital. She shrugged. I mean, yeah, but you've said that before. You always overreact. There it was. The same pattern. Years of gaslighting packaged into a few simple words. That same twisting of reality, that downplaying of my suffering, framed as if she was the helpless victim of my dramatic spells. She couldn't take responsibility, because if she did, she'd have to admit she ignored her son while his body was literally breaking down. And nothing, not even almost losing me, was worth that kind of accountability. That night, I went online and posted a short version of my story anonymously, just to get it off my chest, more like screaming into the void than expecting anything real to happen. I didn't even think anyone would care. I just needed to say it to someone who wasn't going to twist my words or tell me I was being overdramatic. I wrote what happened. The pain, the delay, the target stop, the charger, the burst appendix, the surgery, the infection, everything, and how my mom looked at me like I was the problem through it all. I didn't use any names. I didn't even say I was mad. I just laid it all out like a confession. Within hours, the comments started pouring in. People I didn't know, total strangers from all over the world, telling me what no one in my real life ever had the guts to say. That's neglect. Your mom failed you. You could have died. One person even wrote, I'm a nurse. This makes me sick. I've seen what a ruptured appendix does. You weren't dramatic. You were in danger. And when I read that, the tears just came. Not from sadness, from relief. People believed me. People who had no reason to lie or spare my feelings saw the truth in what I wrote. For the first time, I wasn't alone in the memory. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't difficult. I was a kid in pain who needed someone to care, and the one person who was supposed to step up chose to ignore me. The online thread became like group therapy, and with every reply, I felt a little lighter. My pain, my guilt, my confusion, they weren't mine to carry anymore. Someone else saw it. And that changed everything. That night, after scrolling through all the comments until my eyes burned, I made a decision that felt like crossing a bridge I could never come back from. Not out of spite, not out of some teenager's rebellion, but from a place of pure survival. I decided I was done looking to my mom for comfort. I was done hoping she'd suddenly change or wake up one day and start treating me like someone worth listening to. That part of me, the one that waited, the one that quietly begged for her approval, that part died in the hospital with my appendix. And all that was left was this raw, hurting kid who had to grow up way too fast over a stupid $20 charger and a coffee cup. The next day, I went to the school counselor's office on my own. I didn't even ask permission. I just walked in, asked if she had 15 minutes, and ended up spilling everything. I told her about the pain, about being left, about the surgery and the aftermath. I told her how cold my mom was in the hospital, how she made it all feel like it was my fault. And I braced myself for the look, the expression I was so used to by now, the one that always said, "Maybe you're overreacting." But she didn't give me that look. She leaned forward, eyes soft but serious, and said, "I don't think you're overreacting. I think you were neglected." That word hit me harder than I expected. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't moody. I wasn't being too sensitive. I was a kid who needed help and didn't get it. And that realization, that I was never wrong for asking to be taken seriously, it changed the way I saw everything, especially her. She still acts like none of it ever happened. That's the part that messes with me the most. You'd think a near-death experience would make someone reflect or apologize or even just acknowledge the weight of what went down, but not my mom. She brings up the hospital now like it was some casual inconvenience, like, "Oh yeah, remember that time your appendix went rogue?" With a laugh, as if I slipped on a banana peel and not nearly died from her ignoring every red flag my body was waving. No apology, no conversation, just silence, smirks, and deflection. So I stopped expecting anything real from her. I stopped telling her things about my day. I stopped trying to explain how hard recovery really was or how scared I had been. I started keeping my wins and losses to myself, tucking them away like secrets she hadn't earned the right to hear. I didn't say it out loud, but I started putting up walls, quiet ones, invisible maybe, but solid. And when college applications came around, I didn't ask her for help. Not once. I did it all myself. Essays, deadlines, research, every last step. A part of me knew why. I wanted distance. I wanted out. Out of the constant invalidation. Out of the game where she always had to be right and I always had to prove I wasn't overreacting. I started applying to out-of-state schools, far enough away that I wouldn't have to come home unless I chose to. And if she noticed, she didn't say a word. There's a certain grief that comes with recognizing your parent isn't your safe place, that they might never be. But there's also a strange freedom in choosing yourself for once. Quiet, steady, freeing. Like finally exhaling after years of holding your breath. Healing didn't come in some big, cinematic moment. I didn't wake up one day feeling brand new or suddenly free of all the anger and sadness. It came slow, like peeling layers off skin that had been sunburned over and over, sore but necessary. Therapy helped. Talking to someone who didn't know my mom, someone who wasn't trying to protect her or excuse her, helped me say things out loud I hadn't had the words for before. I learned that trauma isn't always loud. It isn't always bruises or shouting. Sometimes it's silence when you cry out. Sometimes it's the absence of something you needed and never got. Sometimes it's not knowing if the person you rely on will take you seriously when you say, "I'm not okay." I still flinch a little when I get sick. It's like my body remembers what happened, remembers being ignored and brushed aside when it needed urgent help. Even when I get a fever now, a piece of me panics. Not because I think I'm dying, but because that old fear creeps in, whispering that no one's coming. That I have to take care of myself. That I always have. And yeah, that leaves a scar. But it's also made me stronger than I ever wanted to be. More independent. More cautious with who I let close. I look at other families sometimes and wonder what it's like to have a mom who holds your hand in the ER, who doesn't question your pain, who drops everything the second you say, "I need you." And then I breathe and remind myself that even if I didn't have that, I survived anyway. Broken, bleeding, afraid, but still here, learning how to be my own safety, day by day. That's what healing looks like now, not pretty, but real. When people ask why I'm not close with my mom anymore, I don't give them the full saga. I just say, she stopped at a store for a $20 phone charger while my appendix was bursting, and I let that silence fill the space between us. Most people don't need anything more than that. They hear it. They pause, their eyes flicker with disbelief, and you can almost see the realization settle in. some things just aren't forgivable. Some choices speak louder than any apology ever could. It wasn't just about the charger, not really. It was the choice. That in my worst, most vulnerable moment, she saw me shaking, crying, doubled over in pain, and chose to run errands first. That I gasped out, "Please," and she rolled her eyes. That her iced coffee made it into her hands faster than I made it into an operating room. That choice told me everything I needed to know about how she sees me, values me, prioritizes me. And once you see that kind of truth, you don't unsee it. You don't go back. You stop making excuses, stop rewriting the story just to give someone else the benefit of the doubt they never gave you. So now, when I get sick, I trust my gut. I speak up without waiting for permission. I don't count on people who've already failed me to show up. I make the call. I drive myself if I have to. I've learned to be my own parent in the ways that matter most. This isn't some revenge story. This isn't about staying bitter. It's simply, she chose a charger. So now, every day, I choose myself. Not because it's easy. Not because I stopped needing anyone. But because I needed someone that day and she taught me exactly what it looks like when the person you need doesn't come.